All right, that is going live now.
Excellent. Welcome back from your small group work. I heard a lot of excitement from different folks as they were reassembling back in here. And I thought it would be helpful just in the couple of minutes that we have to share one aha or takeaway from the group that you did with your small group work with. So I heard a spark of an idea. What did you learn? How did it work?
I'm happy to start. This has been really, really interesting exercise because, for example, like just, we're talking about fare free transit. Great idea. Sounds super equitable. But, the realization is that, in the conversation is if people can't get to the bus,
Yeah.
what does fare free mean?
Yeah.
And, that's like just one simple thing. And I think that this is just, I think using this tool more and more is going to help us go deeper into our policies and how do we really design them to work the way we think we'd like to. So that's just a really quick thing. We had a great discussion, great ideas from people, thoughts. I don't know if anybody else from my group wants to add anything.
I think we looked at route design, like really kind of looking at how routes are designed and are they reaching the people that need it, and also just having an opportunity to bring the users of public transportation or people who would like to use public transportation, bringing their voices to the table. So we hear from the riders or potential riders.
Makes sense.
We never even got to the bus electrification.
I'm happy to go next. So my group spoke about the design for an electric vehicle charging station grant program. And I'd love to hear from what our folks came up with. I think there are some key structural questions, like, is this money enough to make a difference? And some very specific pieces, like, does it make sense to put money towards level 3 if we have limited dollars and we really think that given how long it might take for certain cars to charge, maybe level 2 should be prioritized so that we can spread it further. I'd say that the two pieces that I thought I'm like grateful, we did not put anything in to allow for grants to support low and moderate income Vermonters to upgrade their electric panels. And this is a huge cost and a massive stumbling block. I also think technically I can already hear people in my committee room say that's energy and technology, but it's a glaring omission that has been identified again and again and again. And here we are, we got it for schools, we got it for affordable housing, and we forget, so I think it's critical to actually have this conversation to say, what are we missing? And then I'll also just say one more thing, that with this type of exercise, we really only got through the first 2 questions and then tried to fly through the rest. But you start here and you find that it just keeps expanding in terms of many people in our group mentioned that actually what you might really need is to have public charging stations. Oh, well, that's in a different section of the bill. So it was great to hear that already folks are thinking so much in a networked way and in a connected way, because that is what transportation is about. And then lastly, in terms of how it broadens, one person said, well, how do we keep the electric rates sustainable? And what about the kids mining the batteries, right? So you can start here and it just keeps expanding. And it's eye-opening, it's hard, and it's important. And I'll also just say, I would never want the perfection to be the enemy of the good, but we should keep charging forth.
Cute.
Keep charging.
Oh my God, I spent way too much time with my chair.
Very similar to your 2 groups. We got through the first 2-ish questions. And I already took away some things. We had the incentive programs for electric vehicles and also mileage smart, the emissions repair program, and replace your ride. And I'd say one of the quotes that was really important for me to hear, that, thank you, Representative Sakowicz, which was, it's expensive to be poor. So the idea that a vehicle, if you purchase a low cost used vehicle and then the repair costs just keep coming back up for you, that's a very expensive thing to deal with. So that was an interesting framing that I hadn't quite thought about with our programs. But two of the things that I took from this conversation was, one, I had not thought about credit scores when we were developing these programs. And if a dealer disqualifies you for your credit score, it doesn't matter how much money we put towards a program, we're missing a whole group of people. And on top of that, something we described was if you've got a band of people in a certain income range who qualify, so your upper low income folks are more likely to take advantage of those incentives than folks in the lower section of that low income band. And the way to resolve that is by having good communication, good marketing, translation services, all of the stuff that we know we need to do. And one of the ideas here was to think about a flexible cap for administrative costs for these programs, or even putting in statute requirements around translation services within that. So really great conversation, and I feel very lucky that we had Good News Garage Representative Paulson. And we had energy and tech friends as well, so.
I had one question. So what I noticed that was really fun and interesting for me floating between groups was that it took like a certain amount of lift for folks to get out of the weeds of the bill and to really be thinking about who is the impacted community, what would it look like to ask them these questions that we're asking, that we've been asking ourselves. What does it look like to sort of transition from speaking for to speaking with? And how the conversation really shifted when people started thinking that way, and how even thinking that way caused new insights to come into the room without even having those folks in the room with us yet. And so that was a really interesting part for me of sort of watching the various conversations and participating in them.
I think for me, the biggest takeaway, our chair just walked away. Self-recognize myself. One of the biggest takeaways is just the amount of time, right? Like each group got through maybe a couple questions. And so thinking this is going to be a real shift for us because the state also has an equity screening tool that's less specific to climate stuff. But I saw the first bill come through my committee that had actually gone through that screening, which was pretty interesting to have the Women's Commission did an analysis of that. And so just like thinking about where in the process do we start? I mean, how do we build in the time that these conversations are going to take? It's antithetical to our process, right? Especially as we're all thinking about crossover and blah, blah, blah. And so just a lot of structural shifting work that I think the Climate Caucus it's going to be ongoing for us to think about how do we integrate these tools and these conversations.
Well said.
Chris, you're the chair.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say one of the interesting dynamics that I notice in our discussion is good to keep in mind is a lot of times, particularly around transportation, we're actually pushing things out into communities, and we should be sure to take care to not omit this when we're handing it out, right? So when we ask for regional support on some of these solutions, I think we need to charge them with also doing this exercise and being mindful, because too often we would say, well, that's decided at the RPC or whatever it is, and wash our hands of it, and that won't do. But great exercise. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for contributing. I hope we can do kind of more of this where it's less me and Sarah and more of all of you, and appreciate everybody's good work and go get them.